Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1119, 1119, Friday, May the 1st, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so we have a very busy news day. Let's go ahead and get to it. Okay, so late last night after the news cycle and after I actually uploaded my video, we had a breaking story, which is not really a news story. It's just a newer story that we've heard before that may have a little bit more oomph to it. And I can't remember where I saw the story, but it's everywhere now. It doesn't matter. It's all over the place. But the story is basically talking about how Joe DeGeneva was on the Howie Carr show, and he said that James Baker has flipped. Now we're talking about the James Baker General Counsel, James Baker FBI General Counsel, Comey's lawyer, James Baker. And DeGeneva says that he is cooperating with the Durham investigation. Okay, so the first time that we heard about Baker cooperating was right at the early onset of the beginning of the Horowitz Inspector General investigation, when he was interviewed very early on by Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz. And it was then that we first started hearing the rumors that Baker was cooperating with the Inspector General Horowitz investigation. So this has been out there for a long time, that Baker has cooperated, or flipped is the term that DeGeneva is using. There are two different things, really. Cooperating means to the extent that you have to come clean, you do, but you don't volunteer anything else other than what you have to. That is kind of what a cooperation is. Flipping is something completely different. Flipping means you give up everything, even things that you're not being asked, details that you're not being questioned on, things that no one may have even known. You just completely turn state's evidence. You become a witness for the state. That's a big difference between cooperating and flipping. So, is James Baker cooperating, or has he flipped? Well, because of his position as general counsel in the FBI, he would have been involved in the decisions on everything. Everything from the agent provocateurs, going up against Flynn, Papadopoulos, and Carter Page, Paul Manafort. He would have been abreast of all that, would have been informed of all that. He would have known about everything going on with the Flynn setup. He would have known about the Papadopoulos setup. He would know about all the stuff having to do with the dossier. Everything, really. Everything that the FBI director or deputy director would need to know to make a decision, he would have been briefed on, because he has to advise them on that. So Baker would know a hell of a lot of things. It would also mean that he would be implicated if he was aware of things that were going on that were of a criminal nature, and that it would put him in a very bad position, especially because and a lot of times what happens in cases like this is that when everybody starts feeling the heat, they circle the wagons around themselves. They put their own protective bubble around them, and suddenly they all get amnesia. Suddenly they all start forgetting things. Suddenly they all can't recall. They can't remember. And when they're caught red-handed, then they try to put the blame on someone else. So this is when you see people turn on each other. There's not a lot of trust amongst these people. They serve the deep state and they serve themselves. But they understand that sometimes amongst a group of them, when they F it up, someone has to get thrown under the bus. So it becomes a game of who's it going to be? I don't know, but it's not going to be me. And that attitude begins to prevail. And that's why everybody circles the wagon, and they begin to go into self-protection mode. Sometimes they try to find allies who will stick with them, and they'll try to find a group of people who stick together with their story. And I think that, again, we saw this developing very early on, is that you're going to see all of these groups circling the wagon. You're going to see the FBI sticking together, because they're all guilty as hell in their little cabal. You're going to see the DOJ people stick together in their little cabal, and they're going to point the finger at each other. And you're going to have about a 5 or 6 way finger pointing contest going on, and this is what's going to happen. But once people know that criminal indictments are imminent, and they understand that they were guilty of being involved in these things, the very first thing they do is go seek out a lawyer, and a lawyer is going to try to help them to get out from underneath it. And the best way to do that is to roll over on someone above you. In other words, if you were involved, if you're a baker, what you have to say to yourself is, okay, gee, what am I going to do? And of course, your lawyers are going to say, well, I mean, you were working under Comey, right? And Comey was working under Attorney General Lynch or Yates, and they're working under the president. So, was the pressure coming from above? Were you in fear that you would lose your job, or were you fearing this or that? I think was there pressure on you? And so this is the type of thing that will happen, and this is why people will start turning on the guy above them. Everyone will try to drop on the guy above them. The prosecutors aren't interested in you dropping on someone below you. Oh, they've already got that guy. If they're going for you, they've already talked to the guy below you, and he's already rolled on you. So what happens is people begin turning on people, but it's you gotta turn on someone above you. So when you get to be someone at the level of a James Baker, there's only a couple people who would be above him, and that would be Comey, Yates, Lynch, and then you get into the administration, Obama. And so there's not a whole lot of people he can turn on. He can certainly incriminate or corroborate a lot of the evidence against people below him, but to really be considered flipping and turning and all that sort of stuff, it's generally meaning you're turning on someone above you. You're giving up someone above you. And when you get to be general counsel, the FBI, there aren't too many levels above you. So, and Comey understands this very well. Yates and Lynch and Obama, they all understand this very well. They expect that the people below them, once the pressure is on them, that this is exactly what they're going to do. So you can bet that everyone right now is lawyering up and trying to find allies and determining on how they're going to try to keep their neck off the chopping block. Quite honestly, I don't think it's going to matter because the evidence shows that all these people are in this cabal together. I don't know that any one is any more criminally liable than the other. I think they're all kind of in this together. I think they'll all probably try to stick together, but in the end, they will, when it comes down to it, they'll all turn on each other and they'll all go down together. That's likely what's going to happen here. So, anyhow, that's my take on whether or not Baker is flipped. I don't know. Maybe he has. Who knows? Whether or not he's flipped at this point, eventually he will. If he has not yet, he will. But DeGeneres says he will. Maybe DeGeneres has people on the inside he talks to. I don't know. But that's what he is saying. And whenever DeGeneres says something, it seems to make it into the news. So we'll continue to follow this story, and we'll see. But it is not the first time we've heard that James Baker has flipped or is cooperating. We heard that back at the beginning of the IG investigation as well. So we will see what happens. Well, probably the biggest story of the day yesterday is just absolutely mind-numbing. We thought that the stuff that was dropped the day before was bad. The stuff that came down yesterday was much worse. And it's much worse because it takes you into the Obama White House. Now, yesterday, Judge Sullivan released 11 pages of documents revealing more damning evidence that the Crossfire Hurricane team and the top leadership at the FBI/DOJ framed Michael Flynn. The new documents show that the FBI field office on January the 4th, again, these dates are so important, January the 4th, the FBI field office sent an electronic communication to the Crossfire Hurricane team and advised them to close the investigation into Flynn because they had found no derogatory information. But in response to that, Peter's been stroking us responded by saying, no, don't do it yet. And then he goes on a tear, texting FBI officials, pressing them to keep the investigation open. In those texts, Peter's been stroking us notes that the 7th floor is involved. Well, the seventh floor, what he means is Comey and McCabe are now involved. And that means that Comey was notified of the situation. And Comey previously had testified that he was unaware of what the Crossfire Hurricane team was doing. Caught in another lie. I've lost count. There must be 30, 40, 50, I forget. It was up around 24 lies the last time I lost count. I don't know how many lies Comey has told, but here he is caught in another one. Now, the very next day, of course, is January the 5th. And that's when they had that secret meeting in the White House. So Comey goes to the White House on January the 5th for that infamous January 5th meeting, which includes Susan Rice, Obama, Biden, and silly Sally Yates. The Flynn case is discussed. Then, 15 days later, is when Rice writes the cover your ass letter about that January 5th meeting, where she says Obama says do it by the book. Well, if they were doing it by the book, they would have closed the case on Flynn. But that's not what they did. The very next day, January 6, 2017, that is the day that Comey goes over to give Trump a briefing on the salacious parts of the dossier, which we now know was part of, Comey was essentially working with the Crossfire Hurricane team. He was over there basically to, not so much to give Trump information, because he thought that the president needed to know, but to get the president's reaction, to judge his reaction, in which case Comey went immediately out to his vehicle where he had a computer and he immediately typed in what his thoughts were, and that was immediately, then he goes to a local New York field office and he goes in their offices and he begins communicating with the Crossfire Hurricane team, who were waiting for him to come out of the meeting so that they could get his immediate impression upon having given Trump this information and what he could read from Trump after giving him this information. Comey was there as part of the coup plot, not to inform Trump of anything. And at the same time that Comey is over there on January 6th giving Trump a briefing on the salacious parts of the dossier as a part of the coup effort, we have Christopher Steele deleting all of his files relating to the dossier. Coincidence? I don't think so. Susan Rice is clearly lying about not knowing about the FBI investigation into the Trump campaign. She wouldn't have been called into that meeting if she didn't know what was going on. And, of course, Biden was in that meeting. It's time for Burisma Joe to answer some questions as well. And then we look at these code names, that we're now getting all these code names. Of course, we already knew about Crossfire Hurricane, the investigation into the Trump campaign. We had learned 2 weeks ago from the Papagalopoulos transcripts that they called him, his operation, Crossfire Typhoon. Now we find out that Flynn's deal was called Crossfire Razor. And they dropped the name of another one, which we don't even know who that is, or what that is. And that's called Crosswind. Crosswind. And now a lot of people are asking the question that many of us have been asking now for months and months, which is, what about the Mueller team? Because we know from codes on these documents that have just been released, both days, that the Mueller team had all of this information from the outset. They had it all. This also shows, in this, what was released yesterday, the 11 pages, that Stefan Halper lied to the FBI when he said that he had attended the event in Moscow, the RT celebration dinner, where Flynn was invited to speak. Halper told the FBI that he was there and was an eyewitness. But we now know from these 11 pages that Halper was not there. He lied. But it has been reported that Joseph Mifsud was there. Was Mifsud there on behalf of Halper? I'm guessing yes. I'm guessing that it was Halper who brought Mifsud into the game, along with Downer. So today, we have Grassley, Graham, Jim Jordan, Doug Collins, and others pointing the finger at Mueller and his team. As Grassley points out, they had all this information, but marched on anyway. Grassley wants to know if people on the Mueller team are going to be held accountable. Well, right now, the last word we got on the part of the investigation that Durham personally was involved in is he's looking right at the Mueller investigation now. That's what he's looking at. He got up to that point where he realized the Mueller investigation never should have happened, and then Barr said, yeah, keep going. Keep on going. And that's what he's been digging into for the past couple weeks, Durham personally. Well, after these last 2 days of material dumps, I think the first thing that crosses my mind is to say to the Attorney General, it's time to issue some arrest warrants. Right now. You have enough information right now to issue arrest warrants on Silly Sally Yates. Peter's been stroking us. Loose Lisa Page. Andy McCabe. That weasel. Weasel words Jim Comey. And Bill Priestap. Every one of these people right now, and probably along with Baker. And Rodenstein as well. Let's not forget. Rodenstein wrote the scope memo which allowed Mueller to do all this. They all need to be issued arrest warrants right now. And they should pick them up in the morning. And they should SWAT raid their ass. And get their documents, their hard drives, and everything else. On every one of these people should be frog marched in cuffs to jail tomorrow morning. And face their arraignment. You may have more evidence, you may have more investigations going on, but you've got enough right now to take these criminals off the street. And send a very powerful message. It will make a lot of other people nervous. And most of these people here, they would cooperate immediately. And other members of the coup plotters' teams would be beating a path to the lawyer's office to get a deal. Durham's phone will be ringing off the hook as every damn one of these criminals will be trying to get a deal. Now maybe Durham wants to make sure he's got everything together so he knows what kind of deal to offer, or if he needs to offer a deal. He may not need to offer any deals at some point. You know, if you can't give him something he doesn't already have, he doesn't need your deal. But there's no question that if it were me and I were the Attorney General, I'd slap the cuffs on at least 3 or 4 of these people tomorrow morning. And Lindsey Graham says, you think that's bad? What happened yesterday and the day before? You think that's bad? Lindsey Graham says, prepare yourself. There's more coming. And it's just as bad, if not worse. And keep in mind, Judicial Watch is still waiting on 20,000 some odd pages of page-struck emails and texts that the FBI is sitting on. What do you think's there? They're sitting on it for a reason. So Trump was asked about this yesterday afternoon after these documents were dropped. And in his presser, Trump said that he absolutely would consider bringing Michael Flynn back into his administration. Fantastic. That's exactly what I would do. As soon as he's exonerated, I would bring him back. I would put him over there with Grinnell until they can get, what's his name, through his nomination process. And I would have him over there working with Grinnell. Because Michael Flynn knows where a lot of the bones are buried. He knows a lot of things. He could really help Grinnell to drain that swamp. Well, it looks like we have a lot more trouble for Gretchen Whitmer up there in Michigan. Yesterday, as armed protesters, some of them carrying rifles, stormed the Michigan State House. Hundreds of them. Some, as I said, armed with rifles. They're, of course, protesting this extended state of emergency. And, of course, they were able to force themselves into the State House, which was currently in session. And it looks pretty ugly on the video. It's funny. Yeah, I've had conversations over the years with people who've told me that, yeah, we need to ban the guns, come get the guns. And I would say, well, people aren't just going to come let you take their guns. You'd have civil war in the country. And I've had people tell me, no, that's just what you guys say. If they ever actually decide to come and take the guns, whatever, you guys, will give up your guns. There might be a few crazy people that might try to hold out, but most of you guys would give up your guns. I said, I don't think you know us very well. This just shows you. What do you think would happen if they tried to confiscate the firearms? This is just an extended state of emergency in one state. Imagine a federal order to take all the guns. Imagine what that would look like. You see, these people just don't understand. And Gretchen Whitmer is about to find out. She is finding out. And you're going to see this repeated. People are sick of it. They've been watching the news. They know that this thing is starting to look like a big scam. They're sick of it. And they're taking action. And I think you're going to see a lot more of this. Who's going to decide when all this crap comes to an end? The folks with the guns. That's who. And that is us. We're going to decide when we finally had enough. So you see people violating these orders every day. They're looking at their government officials and saying, screw you. This has gone on long enough. I'm going to the damn store. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to ride my bike. My kids are going to go play with some other kids. I don't give a damn. We're done. That's what you're seeing. It's finally reached a boiling point. And when people start showing up at the State House during hearings with rifles, you better get the message, Governor. You're messing with the wrong group of people. My brothers and sisters up in Michigan, don't suffer no mess. Taiwan is reporting that Kim Jong-un is alive, but that he's very sick. Maybe. Here's a good question. Why hasn't Bill Clinton endorsed Biden? Well, I think that's a no-brainer, but that's a question some people are asking. Why hasn't Bill Clinton endorsed Biden? I don't think he wants his endorsement. The last thing Biden needs right now is a Bill Clinton endorsement. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? Now, we're hearing that tomorrow morning, or I should say this morning, for you watching a video this morning, that Biden is going to address the Tara Reade situation on MSNBC with Morning Joe. Let me tell you how that is. Okay? Every single question that Morning Joe is going to ask will be scripted. It will have been written by the Biden campaign. Right now, Biden is sitting with his handlers, and they've got note cards for him, and they are going through them with him to get him to memorize the questions and the answers. They are instructing him, do not go off the script. That terrifies them, that he's going to start freelancing, going off the path, and trying to respond to this issue. It's got to terrify him. And I would bet that they'll probably just give him note cards and say, look, here's the questions you're going to be asked. If you can memorize them, do. If not, literally look down and read the damn note cards. Whatever you do, every single word, don't add a word, don't subtract a word. Read it exactly as we've written it here. Do not go off the path at all. Do not ad-lib at all. Say exactly what is here, nothing more and nothing less. That's how he's being coached right now. But every single question and every single word of every single answer is 100% scripted for Burisma Joe for his interview tomorrow morning, or this morning, with the Morning Joe. So you might want to tune into that and check it out. If he goes off script, he will bobble it, he will drive it into the ditch, and he could end his campaign. You better be very, very careful with this one, and that's why they've been trying to avoid this. But they can't anymore because the New York Times came out and rebuked their last statement, and the Washington Post editorial board had had a story yesterday where they came out and said, hey, you need to come out and address this issue personally, Joe. The last thing in the world his handlers want is Biden to personally come talk about this. You just know he can't handle it. It's going to rattle him. And he's going to say something or do something really stupid. If he goes off the script, if he goes off the note cards, and I would fully expect tomorrow morning, watch and see if he isn't reading. If he doesn't look down when he's asked the questions, which he knows what questions are going to be asked, he'll look down at the question and he'll literally read the answer. That's what I think we'll see. We're learning today that the Wall Street executives have informed Biden and his campaign, do not choose Elizabeth Warren as your VP. That's the second warning that they've given on Warren. We also hear that Biden is refusing to release his Senate documents, his records from when he was a senator. But we are learning that he has sent his operatives to go look at them. Yeah, that's right, because he knows eventually he'll be forced to release them. So they're going to go over there right now and get rid of all the bad stuff. Yep. He's probably using Hillary's team to do that. That's what Hillary did. Sent her team over to the State Department basement, and they went through all her emails. Cheryl Mills supervising the effort to get rid of all her damaging emails, too. That's how they operate. The rotten Reverend Clinton will be circling overhead. The demonic buzzard will be circling overhead, cackling away, knowing good and well that Biden is on his way out the door. And she's the only one who can step in and pick up the slack. But she's got a lot of problems. One of the biggest problems she's got is some guy named John Durham, who just realized in the last 24 to 48 hours that she's the mastermind of the coup plot. Speaking of which, let's check in with Paul Sperry's tweets over the last 24 hours. I think he's been watching my videos. What do you think? Paul Sperry, quote, "It all goes back to Hillary. She corrupted the FBI. If she hadn't insisted on using an illegal private server to transmit and receive Senate secrets, there'd be no FBI cover-up. If she hadn't hired Steele to concoct lies about Trump-Russia, there'd be no Spygate scandal." He's pretty close. Quote, "It was Hillary Clinton herself who planted this hoax." It was Hillary Clinton herself who planted this hoax story about Alpha Bank, just as I said yesterday. It was Hillary Clinton herself who planted this hoax story about Alpha Bank and Trump Tower through her dossier contractor Steele and her company lawyer, or campaign lawyer, Michael Sussman. I think Paul Sperry's been watching my videos. And then Hillary had the nerve to tweet it out as if it were news. Yeah, Paul, she sure did, and she did it 2 minutes after the link appeared. And don't forget that Podesta tweeted it out an hour before the link appeared. He had the link an hour before, and he went live. So Paul Sperry has determined that it was Simpson, Steele, and HRC, Hillary Rotten Clinton's lawyers. Simpson, Steele, and the Rotten Reverend Clinton's lawyers. Pretty much. There's a few others, but you're pretty close, Paul. He also includes that on November 2017, Robbie Mook told CNN, quote, "I didn't know the Clinton campaign paid the firm that funded the Trump dossier." November 2017, Robbie Mook telling CNN he didn't know the Clinton campaign paid the firm that funded the dossier, the Trump dossier. He called the Trump dossier. Of course, we know from Christopher Steele's deposition that the Clinton team leadership was being briefed all through this process, back even in the early summer of 2016. Robbie Mook, like Podesta, is lying his ass off. You know, this is why Durham is going to get Steele to testify one way or another. He will subpoena him, whether it's here or in London or wherever, because Steele's making a lot of statements in his deposition, just like he did to BuzzFeed in that case deposition, where he says things that are completely contradicting the Clinton campaign, Podesta, Mook, Comey, McCabe, Strzok. He says things that are contradicting all these people. Someone, and probably all of them, are lying. Steele is going to be the guy that's going to blow these people up. It's obvious. I have a suggestion. I'm pretty impressed with this U.S. attorney, I think in Arkansas, that Bill Barr appointed to look into the Flynn case. He's the one that dug up all these documents and sent them over to the court so that they could be given to Sidney Powell and also passed along to the DOJ. And of course, Bill Barr has been declassifying them and releasing them. That's why we've gotten these document dumps the last 2 days. So I don't know who this Jeffrey Jensen is, this U.S. attorney, but whoever he is, this guy's a straight shooter. He's clearly honest. I want to make a recommendation, Mr. Barr. I recommend that you fire no shit Sherlock Christopher Wray, who's obviously been withholding this evidence now for 3 years. Fire his ass and charge him and bring in Jeff Jensen to be the new FBI director. I'll go with Jeff Jensen. Sure looks good to me. This guy is obviously a straight shooter. Make Jeff Jensen the FBI director. Devin Nunes was on Lou Dobbs, and he gave a very good interview. And of course, he's naming all the names, all the bad actors involved in this coup, not just against Flynn, but the overall coup against Trump. And of course, he points out something, one of the players that Lou Dobbs misses is the media. Of course, we know that Nunes is on a campaign to even the score with the media, who's been going after him and a lot of other people. He's got lawsuits filed against him, and he's really stepping up his game, telling other Republicans, including the president, stop talking to these people. And he's right. But Nunes tells Dobbs, hey, you know, the media in this coup effort, don't consider the media just spectators. They were in on it, as I have said many times. They were absolutely knew exactly what they were doing. They were getting the as we know from Lee Smith, the media this is how Lee Smith got those proto dossiers. He just made a couple phone calls of DC journalists that he knows. And he was told, yeah, I can get you a couple copies of the proto dossiers. Hell, they were being passed all over Washington early in the summer of 2016. I can get you a couple copies of those. And they're in his book. That's where he got them. We know that, what's her name, James Wolfe's girlfriend, got the Carter Page Vice application. And that was also given to New York Times, Washington Post, probably shared with the Daily Beast and all the rest. So they all knew that the Carter Page situation was a frame-up. The media has had every bit of information they have needed to uncover this coup plot 3 years ago. They're not just, you know, spectators in the stands. They are a key part of the coup. In a lot of ways, you could call it a media coup. These people need to be held accountable just as much as the Right Reverend Clinton and her cronies, who are the masterminds, along with the stooges at the FBI, DOJ, State Department, and various other government agencies who danced to the Right Reverend Clinton's tune. And none are more culpable in all of this than the media themselves, who were willing participants in the coup and now the cover-up. They continue. They're spinning every bit of this stuff that's coming out about the Flynn case. They're spinning it every day on MSNBC and CNN. Saying, well, you know, we were talking about Logan Act violations. Logan Act violations. What a joke. These people make me sick. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. Take care.